Welcome to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, where we help new and beginning teachers navigate through those crazy first years of teaching so you can maintain your sanity and personal life. Here's your host, Kim Lapre.
Welcome to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kim Lapre, and this is the podcast for new and beginning teachers who don't want to just survive those first few years, but actually thrive. Today, on episode 51, I'm bringing some experts in to talk to you about home ownership. Now, you may be thinking, Kim, I'm a brand new teacher, and the last thing I can afford is to buy a house. While yes, you are a newer teacher, that doesn't mean that you can't own your own home. In fact, there isn't a better time to buy a home in terms of interest rates, which are always slowly creeping up. So I brought in my good friend and real estate agent, Tonya Spivey, and her friend, who's a loan officer, Wes Shaw, to talk about programs that are dedicated to helping teachers and other school employees get assistance so that they can finally reach their goal of home ownership. Now, why do I think that this is a topic that's necessary to cover? Well, when we're starting out with our teaching careers, we're overwhelmed with all the details that go into being a teacher. And so we often neglect to take care of ourselves. I mean, I'm sure you've seen so many posts, websites, podcasts, programs, and even conferences dedicated to teacher self-care. I mean, it is a big deal because it's so important that we take care of ourselves as teachers. But, part of taking care of yourself is also making sure that you and your family are safe and secure. So it goes without saying that if you didn't have to worry so much about your finances, your home, your health, and the well-being of your family, you'd have more mental energy and space to tackle teaching. If there was a way to feel just a little bit better about some aspect of your personal life, then teaching just might seem a little less overwhelming.
Hey there, this is Danny Sunshine Bauer from Better Leaders, Better Schools and the School Leadership Series, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. The opinions expressed are those of the individual hosts. Make sure you check out all the other great podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com and get ready because the learning begins in 3, 2, 1.
So I wanted to start out by giving you some of my own background on this topic of home ownership before I dive into my conversation with Wes and Tonya. Now, in the past, like you guys, I've rented many times. I thought it wasn't a big deal because I wasn't responsible for things like repairs or property taxes. And truth be told, I didn't even know what property taxes were. And since things like utilities were often included, it seemed like a pretty sweet deal, right? It wasn't until I was teaching, though, and I was looking at my finances and talking to some older friends that I realized I was getting robbed. So unless I lived in a rent-controlled property, my landlord had the ability to raise my rent whenever my lease was up. When I did a search on how much the apartment was worth that I was living in or the house that I was renting and how much that came out to a monthly payment, I realized that, of course, naturally, they were making a profit off of me. I also lived under the constant paranoia that I would inadvertently do something that would cost me my deposit when I moved out, or even worse, I'd have to pay extra. So what finally pushed me into home ownership was having a conversation with a friend over drinks about our expenses. And so she told me how much her mortgage was, which is what you pay. It's like rent, but what you pay when you own a home. And you guys, it was a third less than what I was paying. And after we talked about utilities and adding that into the mix, it didn't seem so free anymore in terms of what I was paying. Then when I realized that she got a bigger tax return because of owning a house, I realized that I was cheating myself out of this opportunity. An opportunity to build my credit, to build my wealth in terms of having an asset and also building equity, and an opportunity to set down some roots and be a grown-up. So I did it. But I'm going to tell you, it wasn't easy. Luckily, my husband came into our marriage with some savings that we were able to use for a down payment. But I know that not all of you are in that same boat. If anything, as a new teacher, I'm sure you're struggling to even save, let alone dream of having a home. So it's really sad to say that many people think that home ownership is so impossible that it's not the American dream anymore. However, after talking to my good friend Tonya, I realized that there are amazing programs out there to help people, particularly teachers, get into a home of their own. So even if you're super skeptical and think that home ownership is out of the question, just give this episode a listen so that you at least know your options. Have an open mind and envision yourself moving into your own first home. And when the time is right, you'll be educated and prepared to dive headfirst into the process. Now, I want to give you guys a heads up that some of this conversation gets technical in terms of real estate language and vernacular. And you'll even hear me ask some questions. I had no idea about these programs before this discussion with Tonya and Wes in terms of like the details and the fact that there's more than one. So to help you guys out, I picked out some of the terms that I wasn't sure about and had to look up myself, and I've included those in the show notes for you. So if you're kind of like, what is that? You can go ahead and take a look at that. And finally, we discussed programs based in California. And while I know that I have a strong California following, many of you do not live here. So listen to the types of programs Wes describes and how they help. And towards the end, Wes and I discuss programs in other states. So that's going to be really valuable. But first, you want to know what the programs are, and then you want to know how to find out what's available to you. Because Wes shares a valuable resource for those of you outside of California, so you want to make sure you listen to the end to catch that. I promise it'll be worth it. So thank you, Wes and Tonya, for joining me on the podcast today. Could you please tell me a little bit about yourself, Wes, and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Wes Shaw, and I'm a loan officer with Movement Mortgage. I've been providing people with advice and helping them secure financing to purchase a home. I've been doing that since 2004. It's really a job that I'm passionate about. I love helping people and just helping them figure out the ins and outs, to leave no stone unturned, to look at all the options and see what we can do to help make the home buying process more affordable for them.
How about you, Tonya?
Well, I am a real estate agent and I specialize in transition. So for those people that are first-time home buyers jumping from rental to home ownership, those that are transitioning up. So if maybe their family's growing or they want to upgrade their home, as well as the empty nesters or the retirees that are looking to downsize. Also divorce, losing a loved one and their house is either going into probate or it has a trust. And so the family members are looking to sell. So those are kind of the different positions, because I love the emotional side of what everybody's going through. And I understand, for me, it's not just business. I like to kind of handhold and help people through the different transitions that we have in life.
Well, that's awesome. So that's not just, I'm going to try to get you into this house and move on to somebody else then.
Right. No, definitely. There's so much emotion that goes in with the home buying and selling process. And that's where I feel like my specialty is.
So for those of you listening, just so you know, Tonya and I have been friends for a very long time. And Tonya actually reached out to me because she wanted to inform my listeners who are teachers about some opportunities. So Tonya, could you give us a little more about why you felt, compelled to talk about this?
I just think it's such an important, like there's so many different programs out there, and I feel like teachers especially need to be serviced and supported because they're like servicing and supporting our young kids that then grow up to be adults. So I just am so passionate about these opportunities that people just don't know about.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm sure they're going to get so much out of this, because a lot of times when new teachers come out of their teacher credential programs, a lot of them are a little bit younger, maybe like in their 20s to 30s, and they've only rented at this point. So for a lot of them, they think that home buying is really out of reach. So this goes to both of you. You know, a lot of teachers think that they'll never be able to afford a home. And so they don't, or maybe they don't even see the point. They might think that, you know, if I own a home, then I'm stuck here. And what if I can't afford it? What if my, you know, teaching situation changes? So why is this a myth or misconception?
I think that owning a home is a popular myth or misconception, first of all, because a lot of people think that you have to have a huge amount of money in order to purchase real estate. It's a popular misconception amongst consumers that it takes, you know, a 20% or more down payment to even think about buying a home, whereas the average down payment for a first-time home buyer is right around 6%. And it can even be much less than that with these programs that we have access to, down payment assistance, where, you know, they will provide for teachers or really any employee of a unified school district here in the state of California up to 4% of a purchase price to use towards their down payment and closing costs as part of the teacher program. So I think that that's one big barrier or block in people's mind, is that they think it's going to take a huge amount of resources and money that, you know, they're just going to have to save up a bunch, and it's something that they can never get to. Another thing, you know, that a benefit that they get through home ownership is, you know, that forced savings. You're going to be paying a monthly housing expense anyways, whether you're renting or you're owning a home. So really, in owning a home, you're going to have all the additional benefits that come along with home ownership, like being able to take the additional tax deductions and building appreciation over time as the home values increase year over year. And so you're really building your wealth. You're diversifying and having that asset that's going to grow and work for you. And you're going to have the same monthly payment for the whole entire 30 years. I mean, think about it. Elsewhere it's different, but here in San Diego, the average rent is $3,000 a month and it increases at an average pace of 3% per year. But when you do get into a home, you're going to fix that monthly housing payment for the whole entire 30-year term of the mortgage. So now in essence, you've just locked in how much you're going to pay for housing, versus when you're renting, you have to be subjected to increases amongst a lot of other issues and factors.
Right. And when you're paying rent, it's your landlord that's making that money, as opposed to when you're paying a mortgage. You know, when you own a home, then you're paying into like the equity, you know, you're paying yourself.
You're absolutely right. You're paying down your principal balance that's going to benefit you in the future, and you're also building that equity that's going to also be a nice nest egg for you in the future.
Now, you had mentioned 30-year, which, you know, for a lot of us, we're like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 30 years. What is the advantage of a 30-year versus some of the other loan options? So
the most common term for somebody when they're taking out a mortgage is to have a 30-year term. So you'll have payments that are, you know, divided amongst 360 months or 30 years. It doesn't mean that you have to stay in that loan for the entire 30 years. You can certainly, you know, purchase a home and sell it within 5 years, or refinance later on down the road if you like. But the 30-year time frame helps make the payments more affordable. We could also look at 25-year options or 20-year options, or some people even look at 15 and 10-year options. But the monthly payment does get more expensive as we shorten the term. So most typically, you know, people will take and extend that to the 30-year one to make things more affordable.
Okay. So as opposed to something that's adjustable, like how do you guys feel about the types of mortgages where it's like really low for 5 years and then it changes?
It would definitely depend on the person's situation. With interest rates being where they are right now, we're coming off of a period of historic lows. Prior to 2008, people were paying upwards of 6 and 7+% in their interest for their mortgage. But with the steps that the federal government took to help stimulate the economy, we're coming out of a period when interest rates have been at historic lows. So I myself am maybe a little bit more conservative in that I think that you should have a fixed payment that will stay the same for as long as you're going to be in the home, which gives you the option to be there as long as 30 years. There are adjustable rate options. If somebody knows that they're only going to be in the home, let's say 5 years, and they know at the end of 5 years they're going to be moving on to their next home, absolutely, most certainly, then maybe that makes sense for them because they have that fixed time frame. But other than if you don't have a situation where you have a set time frame like that, what you're basically going to do is you would have that savings of having the lower interest rate on an adjustable rate mortgage for the initial period. But then once that fixed period is up, say 5 years, then your interest rate is going to start to adjust. And 5 years from now, we're going to be in a market where interest rates are much higher than they are now. So I would rather see people just take the savings and have the stability versus risking it if they didn't have some immediate need for a short-term note that was adjustable like that for a 5-year period, let's say.
Okay, that's good to know. That way when they're shopping around, they won't get sort of convinced or swindled into getting something like that if they feel that the 30 years is going to be better for them.
Absolutely. And it gives people more options too at the end of that term, because then sometimes people will hang on to the house and rent it out and move on to the next home, and then they know that the housing payment is going to remain fixed and they don't have to worry about the expense of refinancing the mortgage and being subjected to whatever the current market rate is in the future, which is anticipated to be higher than what people are paying these days.
Nice. So Tonya had mentioned that there were different programs and you had mentioned it too, that were available to teachers and any, employee in a unified school district. So what is one of those programs?
The most popular program that I love to help our educators with, or really, like you said, any unified school district employee or school employee, is the school teacher program through the California Housing Finance Agency. It's our housing authority here in the state of California that will provide down payment and closing cost assistance for any employee of a unified school district that's looking to purchase a home. They will give them an amount that's equal to up to 4% of a purchase price to use towards the down payment and closing cost. And we're talking about a loan program that only requires a minimum down payment of 3% for conventional and 3.5% for, let's say, FHA, depending on the best fit for the client.
What's FHA?
So that's a great question. The conventional financing compared to FHA. The mission of FHA is to serve the underserved borrowers. So with FHA financing, we have access to a little bit more lenient guidelines that will allow for a borrower to qualify for a little bit more monthly payment. There are additional costs that come along with the financing, and I would be more than happy to go over that with anybody who'd like to call with any questions. But the main mission of FHA is to serve the underserved borrower that doesn't qualify for those traditional conventional programs that are out there.
So with the school program, you had mentioned something about FHA, and I forgot how those are tied together.
The school program actually can be used with either conventional financing or FHA financing. What really typically governs which one is going to be a better fit is the buyer's credit score. Under these programs, FHA will allow for a FICO score down to 640. The California Housing Finance Agency has a minimum cutoff at 640. So credit credit score is 640 and above. And when you compare conventional options to FHA options, you're usually if you're at 700 or below for your credit score, usually FHA is going to be more of an affordable option when it comes to your monthly payment, because the mortgage insurance tends to get a little bit too pricey with the under 700 FICO score. So that's usually my litmus test when I'm working with people, is where are we at with respect to the credit score.
Okay, so for this program, I can borrow 4% of the purchase price and use that 4% for my down payment, right?
Correct. So done a $200,000 purchase, that would be $8,000 that they're going to provide to be credited towards your down payment and your closing costs that are involved in the transaction. Because you have to remember that you have your down payment, right, that you put down. It's the difference between your loan amount and the purchase price. And then you also have closing costs that are involved in a transaction, which include the escrow fees, the title fees, the bank fees, and things like that. But there are great things that Tonya, when we work together, there are great things that Tonya can do in negotiating the offer and the contract that's made to purchase a home, where maybe the seller helps pick up a portion of that, because closing costs can be anywhere from 2 to 5%, depending on what program and options we're talking about.
So if I were to go a normal route without this program, I would put down, let's say I was going to put down that $8,000. So the amount that I am borrowing is $192,000. So, but with this, I am borrowing that $8,000. So then is my final loan going to be $208,000?
Yes, what they'll do is they don't grant you the money with the California Housing Finance Agency. What they'll do is they'll provide you the funds, and then they will put a lien on title to the home and be in secondary position, and then that will stay there. There's no payments on the money. The payments are deferred indefinitely through the entire 30-year term of the note, and you have basically until you get to the end of 30 years to get the money back to the state, or whenever the time comes for you to sell the home. Then that's, those are the two events that typically trigger repayment on the funds that are provided for the down payment assistance.
And how is the interest different on that, say, $8,000 lien on your house compared to the first mortgage?
The interest is very nominal on the down payment assistance program. It's currently at 3.5% simple interest. So you could just take that $8,000, at 3.5% would be $280 a year. So I have some clients, it just depends on the people. I have some clients that will, not make a payment the whole entire time and just pay it back later. I have other clients that will just send in a $280 check when they get their annual statement from the state. And then I have other clients that work at chipping it away slowly over time so that it's repaid sooner. So it just depends on what the client's preference is.
Okay. And you had mentioned mortgage insurance, and some of my listeners might not know what that is.
So whenever you have less than 20% for a down payment, the government requires that, and the banks through the government require that you have a mortgage insurance policy in place. And it just protects them, because less skin is in the game in terms of a down payment. So the insurance would help the bank cover their losses in the event of a default, where they had to foreclose on the home, and say you had only put 3% down, and then something happened, life circumstances, unfortunate things happen, and then there was a default. Then the mortgage insurance steps in and helps the bank recover the collateral and get it sold and cover the expenses associated with that process. And so whenever you have less than a 20% down payment, you're always going to have private mortgage insurance. Sometimes people refer to it as PMI, MIP, MI. They're all referring to the same thing, which is that private mortgage insurance or mortgage insurance, which is typically paid as a a dollar amount included in the monthly payment, but there are multiple different ways that it can be structured and paid for. There's an option to buy it out through the close of escrow and just pay a one-time single premium, or you can split it up where you pay a little bit up front to make the monthly expense less expensive, or then the most popular option is where people just have an additional expense that's added to their monthly payment.
And how long do you have to pay that?
The private mortgage insurance is in effect. They have laws on the books that will automatically cancel the mortgage insurance when it reaches 78%, when your original purchase price and loan amount, so the original terms of the financing, assuming no appreciation, your mortgage balance reaches 78%, it'll get automatically canceled. But through the magic of home appreciation, we see right now forecasted in San Diego is set at 4.4% year over year. With the home price appreciation every year, you just keep an eye on it, and then you would be able to request that the mortgage insurance be canceled out of the loan when you reach that 80% or loan to value or 20% equity position. There's a 2-year minimum that the government requires that you have the mortgage insurance on conventional financing. So you would have to wait through that 2-year period. I know some values here in San Diego and other parts of the country were appreciating quite quickly. And I did have some clients that would get to that point prior to the 2 years, but the government requires a minimum of 2 years on conventional financing. And then after that, if you've reached it, great. It takes a little bit longer than once you get to that point, which you could ask me or Tonya, and we could check on the comparable sales in the neighborhood and see what home prices are valued at to give you a better idea at any point in time after your purchase. And then the FHA financing, those rules work a little bit differently. When you make a 3.5% down payment and you use FHA for your financing, the mortgage insurance is in effect for the life of the loan, and the only way to remove the mortgage insurance is to actually refinance the loan.
Okay, so just to make it clear, you have to keep paying it for a minimum of 2 years, but above that, you need it so that your balance left on your loan is 78% of the original.
That's when it will, by law, be automatically canceled when it reaches 78% of the original appraised value, just by paying down the balance.
There's an advantage if you live in an area where the home values are increasing faster, because you're going to reach that 78% faster because your home is worth more. Right.
Yeah, through home price appreciation. If you look back historically, over 59 years, it's at about 5%. I think they're forecasting 4.6 to 4.8% nationally right now with the economists that are forecasting home price appreciation. So that will have an added benefit to your home reaching that value, so you can cancel it sooner. So it just depends on where your comfort level is on your planning. If you are more on the conservative side, maybe you make plans to pay it longer, and if not, then you'll know that you have the benefit of that appreciation.
And also, just chiming in with that appreciation, that's one reason to think about going from renting to buying, because think about, you have to live somewhere. Why not gain that at least like 4.5 to 5% in the investment side of things?
Wes, how does someone apply for the school program? Do they just talk to their realtor?
Yeah, you would talk to your real estate agent, who would get you in touch with a loan officer like myself. So someone like Tonya, who would get you in touch with someone like me, or you can get in touch with me directly. And I would help take you through the process of getting all of your information together so that we can make sure that you meet the qualifications for the program. And then it's just an extra step in the loan process. So you go through the same process as everybody else who's buying a home, and then at the very end we send your information off to the state of California to get a rubber stamp approval, and then it just proceeds with closing like a regular transaction. So it does add one step in the process, but it's a really quick one, and you could come to myself or a real estate agent like Tonya, and we can help get you connected.
Awesome. And it's worth it if it's going to help you get into a house. All right, so the second program, what do you have for us?
The second program is for anybody who isn't an employee of the Unified School District or a school throughout California. They would work for basically anybody as long as you are under the income limit that they've set for San Diego. For example, in San Diego, we have a limit this year of $157,050 annually. It's called the My Home program, again, through the California Housing Finance Agency, and it provides for assistance up to 3.5% that could be used towards down payment and closing costs on a program that requires 3 to 3.5%, being those conventional FHA options again. So very similar to the teacher program, the school program that we talked about. Mm-hmm. It's just it's a 0.5% less in benefit, and it's for everybody. So they give a little extra credit for our educators and school district employees, and then for everybody else does have access to a similar program that works exactly the same way. It's just a 3.5% benefit rather than a 4% benefit.
Okay, and so the same repayment terms and PMI and all of that.
Yeah, the first mortgages would all be the same on these. It's just the assistance package comes at 3.5%. Same 3.5% simple interest on the assistance that's given and can be used towards down payment and closing costs. So everything is the same across the board. It's just the 3.5% versus the 4% with the school teacher.
Does your down payment affect your interest rate on the first mortgage at all?
Actually, these programs, when you're applying for these programs, the interest rates are set by the state agency, the California Housing Finance Agency. So no, it doesn't. It does not impact your interest rate.
But for a normal, like non-school employee, someone who doesn't qualify for this, would their interest rate be impacted by their down payment?
It is a factor that comes into play on traditional financing when we're not talking about down payment assistance programs like this. There is an adjustment for the loan to value that's factored into how interest rates are priced. But with these programs through the California Housing Finance Agency, it's the actual agency that's setting the interest rates for the conventional FHA, VA options that they offer.
And do they tend to be lower?
They tend to be, it depends on the assistance that you need. So if you wanted to use the school teacher program, or if you wanted to use the My Home program, which was the one that I was just speaking about, the interest rates as of Friday, March 16th, we're at 4.625% for conventional financing, and then for FHA financing, it was at 4%. So they're relatively inexpensive.
That's fabulous. That's better than what everybody else can get.
Absolutely. And then so it increases if you need more assistance. I think this is a perfect segue into the third program I was going to talk about.
Okay.
The California Housing Finance Agency offers an additional third program for people who may need a little bit more assistance covering the down payment and the closing costs. They call it their zero interest program, or ZIP, which stands for Zero Interest Program. And they can get an additional 2 to 3% that can be provided to them at no interest for the period of time in which they're borrowing the funds to use towards closing costs. And then if they do utilize that additional ZIP program in conjunction with the My Home or the school teacher program, it does adjust the interest rate to a higher percentage. For example, if they wanted to get the extra 2%, it would be at 5.25% effective Friday, March 16th, and 5.625 for the 3% assistance with the ZIP program from March 16th. So it depends on how much assistance they're going to need. So it really varies from one client to the next, and what their own financial profile looks like and how much help they're going to need.
So you would just use this in conjunction, say, with the My Home, and both of those together would be like a second mortgage, not like a third mortgage.
Yeah, it would be, yes, it'd just be in secondary position on title. So in conjunction with the school teacher program, people could get upwards of 7% to use towards their down payment and closing costs. And then if you're not an employee of a unified school district, then you could get upwards of 6.5% by layering both programs together to use towards your down payment and closing costs. So it just depends on the amount of assistance that's needed. Like I was saying with the mortgage insurance, sometimes people would rather structure it so that they're buying out that mortgage insurance premium and paying that upfront one-time fee rather than paying every month. So there's different options that we look at when we're going through this process together. And I crunch all the numbers and provide the options, and we see which one's going to be the best fit.
Now, is there any way to use that 6.5% or 7% to pay off your PMI?
Yes. Yeah, I have done that with clients. We'll structure it so that the assistance is helping pay a single premium for the mortgage insurance at the close of escrow so that there is no monthly PMI.
Nice. So then, just to get this straight. So the first one, the school program, is for teachers and school employees. The second one is for everybody else, but there is an income limit on that one. And then the third one, the zero interest program, is if the other two programs aren't quite meeting what you need, then you can add this one to that to help get you what you need for that down payment.
You got it perfectly down.
Awesome. And then you have one more, right?
We do have another program that works in addition or helps our veterans and active duty service members. It's also with the California Housing Finance Agency that works along with the VA benefit. So again, Tonya can do wonderful things in negotiating contracts with her negotiating skills to help get the closing costs covered by sellers, but sometimes that's not always an option, and maybe assistance is needed to help cover the closing costs involved in a transaction. So the California Housing Finance Agency also offers this in conjunction with the VA home loan benefit. And so they would provide up to 3.5% assistance to be used towards the closing costs in conjunction with the VA home loan.
What's a VA home loan?
A VA home loan is a benefit that active duty and retired service members get that have either served or currently serving in the military.
Can they double dip somehow and have, if you're a teacher who was active duty?
No, you wouldn't be able to do that. You would have to pick one or the other. If someone was a retired service member and they wanted to utilize, or I would tend to tell them to go ahead and use the VA home loan benefit because it does give you 100% financing with no monthly mortgage insurance premium. So that typically would be a better fit for them if they were retired, a service member, and also being an instructor at the time. That would be better.
And how, again, does the Golden State Funding help them?
Golden State Funding Authority is another state agency that provides down payment assistance grants. They provide grants up to 5% that's used towards the down payment and closing costs. And the interest rates are slightly higher and more elevated on these Golden State Funding Authorities. So it really just depends on the overall tolerance and financial profile and situation with the client. It is granted money, so they do have a 3-year time frame though that you have to wait through in order to get the money forgiven. It's forgiven in over 36 months or 3 years, and then it's not required to be repaid. But again, the interest rates are a little bit higher, and they also don't go as high as the California Housing Finance Agency does in terms of purchase price. Like, they cap their loan amounts only go up to $484,350 here in San Diego, versus the California Housing Finance Agency will help people with loan amounts up to $690,000.
It's nice though that it's forgiven, but it kind of depends on also how much you have to pay during that 3-year period.
Yeah, we would crunch the numbers and look at it, and typically the California Housing Finance Agency is going to have a less expensive interest rate for the person to pay. So it really just comes down to personal preference, and if someone values getting that money granted to them versus maybe paying a higher monthly payment. So it really just comes down to personal choice.
Right. Now, I know that I do have a lot of listeners in California, but the majority of my listeners are not. They're actually all over the world. But specifically for teachers in the U.S., are these programs available in all states? Like, I know they have the name California attached to them, but are there similar programs in other states?
There are other similar programs in other states, maybe not every state, but definitely other states. The company I work with, Movement Mortgage, we're licensed across the country, and we have access to multiple different down payment assistance programs in other states. The best resource that I could suggest for checking out and seeing what's available in your area is by going to a website that is downpaymentresource.com, and you could go to that website and literally just type in the address. You can go try your own address that you're at right now if you're renting and see what programs are around your area, and it'll bring up a list of whatever local or state resources that will be available for you.
Nice. Now, for those of you who are listening on the road, I'm going to put that link in the show notes so that you can go ahead and take a look at that later. Now, are any of these programs for like first-time home buyers?
They are for first-time home buyers, but the definition of a first-time home buyer is someone who has not owned a home in the last 3 years. If you owned a home and you sold it, maybe back in 2008, or you just haven't owned in the last 3 years, then you are technically defined as a first-time home buyer. Again, you would be eligible for these programs.
Oh, wow. So I could technically be a second or third time home buyer, but if I had some time between that, then I can benefit from being a first time home buyer.
Exactly. Definitely. I even have some clients who have relocated from other places in the country. I helped a gentleman who relocated from New York, and he had been renting here in San Diego for 3 years, and we were just required to show that he was relocated and renting for 3 years, and they made an exception for him to also be eligible for the program. So there are some workarounds that I can help people with.
That's amazing. Okay. Now, if a teacher in another state or even another country wants to do research on this, what should they be looking up? Because it's not going to have, California attached to it. What terms should they be looking for? And what are some red flags that they should be cautious about during their research?
I would say that the best resource to go to is going to be the downpaymentresource.com website that I gave to you, Kim, because, how they say, like, don't play Dr. Google, don't go on the internet and just start Googling things and start, that is a great way to get a general idea and understanding, but there are a lot of less scrupulous people out there that have, generated websites that make it look very attractive or maybe seemingly more attractive than it really is. And how the old adage goes, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Mm-hmm. So there are different websites that have come up, even when you were doing some research before our show today, where improperly disguising one program to be something that it wasn't. And so you just want to make sure that you're being mindful about the websites that you're going to. These programs are available through your local and state governments, so you will usually see some sort of affiliation there with like a .gov address. For example, California Housing Finance Agency is calhafa.ca.gov. And just those best practices that one would have, looking at things on the internet and making sure that you're getting your information from a good source.
Tonya, have you ever run into a situation or heard of anyone who, they do have this information about these down payment assistance programs, but for whatever reason, a lender is unwilling to offer them or even entertain the idea of doing that?
Yes, that's where you definitely want to do your homework, like ask friends and family if who they used for their lender. Obviously, Wes and I are great resources no matter where you live in the U.S. You can contact us and we will find a referral for you in your area through our diligence of we know what questions to ask the people in your area.
Now, why wouldn't someone want to offer this to a potential buyer? Like, why would they not even bring it up? Because I've never heard of it before when I was buying a house, and they knew that I was a teacher. So why didn't they tell me about this?
It's really a lack of it could be a combination of different things, either a lack of wanting to deal with the process. At Movement Mortgage, we process these programs in-house with our own underwriting staff. Other banks and lenders, they have to send it out to a specialty company that will handle it, and it could take longer. It could be a lot more time and energy on their behalf. They could just simply not know about the program. Maybe they're newer or just haven't been exposed to it, or their company just simply isn't signed up and doesn't train them on the program. I mean, I have that pop up all the time. I need to constantly be taking classes and coursework so that I stay up to date on these programs and what they're offering and the changes that they make year over year. And a lot of people don't make the time and take the energy to go and be educated on the options so that they can best present them to their clients. So it's either not available, or they're not taking the time and energy to make sure that they're including these options in their presentation.
So if I live in South Carolina and I already have my house picked out, and none of the banks there are willing to do this, or they don't even know about it, what are my options?
There is always an option to contact the down payment administrator, and they should have a list of lenders that they work with that they can put you in touch with that are approved to offer their program. So you can go directly to the program administrator. For example, we were talking about the California Housing Finance Agency, and they have a list of everybody who's approved to offer their program, and you could use that as a resource if you were not coming up with somebody. Now, that may not be the most preferable way to do it, because you're literally just picking somebody off of a list and you don't really have any background information on them or how good of a job they may or may not do for you. So like Tonya was saying, we're more than happy to be a resource, but that would definitely also be another option for you.
Okay. Thank you so much. This has been so informative, even for me, and I've bought a couple houses and I learned a lot today. So thank you. Now, Wes, how can my listeners get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of me would be either by phone or by email. They can reach me on my direct line at 858-888-5270, or you can email me at wes.shaw@movement.com.
Awesome. And I'm going to put that in the show notes, you guys. And for you, Tonya, how can my listeners get a hold of you?
So my phone number is 619-302-9891, and email is Tonya, Tonya Spivey, SP as in Paul, IV as in Victor, EY, @gmail.com.
Thank you so much, you guys. I know that this is going to help so many teachers get into homes when they thought that they never, ever could. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, you guys, that was a lot, wasn't it? I mean, Wes and Tonya know so much about this, and they are honestly such great resources for you guys. And what's so amazing to me is that they're so generous and are willing to hook you up with other real estate agents and loan officers in your area that happen to be familiar with your state's finance housing association programs. So if you're not in the California area, they're so nice to help you guys find out someone in your own state who can help you get hooked up with these programs. So take a look at downpaymentresource.com, the website that Wes discussed, to see what programs are available to you in your own area, and then reach out to Tonya and Wes to figure out what your next or future steps should be. So I think you guys should bookmark this episode because I'm sure you're going to need it in the future. And I really appreciate you hanging out with me today, and I hope you have a fabulous week.
Thanks for listening to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast. Love this episode? Head over to Apple Podcast or Google Play to subscribe, rate, and leave a review.